A 600-pound lion barrels forward, claws tearing through the dirt, eyes locked on a man kneeling defenseless inside the enclosure. Screams erupt from the crowd. Phones drop. A child cries out. And yet the man doesn't move. He opens his arms. The lion leaps. And then, something no one expects. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Depth. The afternoon sun bore down on Big Sky Wildlife Sanctuary with a punishing glare, baking the cracked desert soil into stone. Heat waves shimmered like ghosts above the horizon, and the dry air stung the throat with every breath. The sanctuary had been buzzing all day. School groups, tourists, wildlife photographers, all converging near one of its most visited attractions, the lion enclosure. Children pressed their faces against the reinforced glass and mesh, while parents hovered behind, reminding them not to get too close. Phones were everywhere, some filming, some live streaming, others snapping the perfect shot of Caesar, the sanctuary's prized lion. He was a colossus of raw power, his mane a storm of dark gold, his shoulders rippling with every slow, calculated step. But anyone truly watching, really watching, would have noticed something more. His eyes didn't wander the crowd, didn't follow the usual flutter of movement beyond the fence. They were locked onto the man inside the enclosure. He stood in open space, unarmed, unguarded. No handler uniform, no tranquilizer rifle, no protective cage. Just a man in dusty boots, worn jeans, and a gray shirt darkened at the collar with sweat. His name was Tom Reynolds, though the crowd didn't know that. All they saw was a lone figure trespassing in a death zone. At first, no one believed their eyes. Murmurs rippled through the spectators. Some laughed nervously, assuming it was a planned demonstration. A few staff members shouted from behind the viewing deck. Too late. The moment their voices rang out, Caesar stopped pacing. He stared. Muscles coiled beneath his tawny fur like springs wound to the point of rupture. His tail flicked once, then explosion. The lion bolted toward Tom with terrifying speed, covering ground in devastating strides, the pads of his massive paws slamming the earth like sledgehammers. Dust erupted in plumes behind him. His growl rumbled through the air like a living storm front, primal and deafening. Every instinct in the human brain screamed danger. Parents shrieked. Children began to cry. Several people ran. Others stood rooted in place, phones trembling in their hands as they recorded what they believed would be a brutal, graphic tragedy. But Tom didn't move. His expression remained unreadable, somewhere between peace and defiance. He closed his eyes for half a second, inhaled slowly through his nose, and then, in one graceful motion, lowered himself onto one knee. Arms open, palms visible, head bowed ever so slightly, as if in surrender or prayer. To those watching, it was insanity. Suicide. A man waiting to be torn apart. Caesar was seconds away. 20 feet. 10. 5. The lion leapt. For a heartbeat, the world stopped turning. His entire body lifted off the ground, a blur of claws, muscle, and instinct, arcing through the air toward the kneeling man. And then, it didn't happen. There was no scream, no impact, no blood, no collapse. Caesar landed not on Tom, but beside him. A cloud of dust rose as the lion skidded slightly, then came to a full stop. He didn't growl. He didn't strike. He stood, sides heaving, towering over Tom, and leaned in. The crowd gasped as the lion's enormous head brushed against the man's chest. Phones fell silent, hands lowered. For a moment, the barrier between man and beast had vanished, and something else, something ancient, had taken its place. But nobody yet knew what. Caesar didn't pounce. He pressed his massive head against Tom's chest and let out a sound that no one expected. A deep, tremulous groan, not from the throat, but from somewhere far deeper. It was the sound of recognition, of a bond ruptured by time but not broken. The crowd, frozen in a collective breath, gasped and then fell utterly silent. Phones, still recording, now captured not a mauling but an impossible tenderness. And with that single motion, a lion embracing a man, the story transformed. Tom Reynolds wasn't a reckless thrill-seeker or a deluded idealist. He was Caesar's former guardian. Years earlier, on the edge of the Okavango Delta in Botswana, Tom had rescued Caesar. Then a tiny cub, his fur matted with blood, his mother's body riddled with poachers' bullets lying beside him. Tom had named him, nursed him through fever, fed him from bottles, slept beside him in the straw. For 3 years, they had been inseparable, until Caesar's rapid growth and tightening regulations made continued private ownership impossible. He had fought it, fought the bureaucracy, the permits, the wildlife boards. But in the end, he was forced to give Caesar up. Big Sky Wildlife Sanctuary had promised specialized care, enrichment, respect. They had lied. What the public had seen, the majestic lion with fire in his eyes, was only the surface. Behind closed gates, Caesar had suffered. Not from neglect in the obvious sense, but from ignorance, bored to madness, poked with cattle prods during medical checks, left without mental stimulation or consistent handlers. The staff rotated weekly. No one had learned his triggers. No one bothered to ask about his history. When Caesar began reacting, growling, swiping, refusing food, they labeled him unfit. The paperwork began to move. Euthanasia. Quiet. Unannounced. Tom had only discovered the truth by accident. A short email from a former colleague who had stumbled across internal notes. "Finality recommendation approved," it said. The decision had been made in secret by the sanctuary's director, Marvin Cutter, a man known for cost-cutting, not compassion. Tom tried everything. Emails, threats. He reached out to animal rights lawyers. No one moved fast enough. So he did the unthinkable. He bypassed security, slipped in during visiting hours when cameras were guaranteed to be rolling. He wasn't suicidal. He was strategic. He knew Caesar wouldn't hurt him, but he needed the world to see that truth. And it worked. Within minutes, videos flooded social media. But the footage didn't demonize Caesar. It condemned the sanctuary. The once reverent tone around Marvin Cutter's institution curdled into fury. The crowd's fear had shifted, not toward the beast behind the bars, but toward the ones who had locked him in and planned to bury him quietly. And now, the world was watching. The footage detonated across the internet like a moral bomb. Within a matter of hours, the clip of Caesar's charge and sudden collapse into Tom's arms was reshared, reframed, dissected, and celebrated by millions. What had begun as a horrifying moment turned, frame by frame, into something mythic. Influencers reposted it with captions like, "This is not just about a lion. This is about trust, love, and betrayal." Celebrities weighed in. Animal welfare groups mobilized. Even late-night comedians aired the clip, cutting from Caesar's leap to the thunderous silence of the crowd, and then the embrace. The symbolism was irresistible. But the comments told the deeper story. A storm of moral clarity emerged in the digital tide. That lion recognized his friend. He remembered. He remembered. This isn't about wild instincts. This is about what captivity does to living beings. Shame on Big Sky. Shut It. Down. What kind of place tries to kill an animal for remembering love? Hashtags surged. Hashtag save Caesar. Hashtag justice for the king. Exile Marvin. A petition calling for the sanctuary's immediate investigation hit 500,000 signatures by midnight. By morning, it doubled. And yet, Big Sky didn't waver. In a sterile press conference flanked by silent PR staff, Marvin Cutter emerged in a crisp suit and dead eyes. His voice was cold, mechanical. The video, while emotionally charged, does not reflect Caesar's overall behavior. He remains classified as aggressive and unsafe. We must prioritize staff and visitor safety. Our position has not changed. The words hit like acid. Social media exploded. Articles surfaced, uncovering Caesar's incident logs, vague, inconsistent, and damning in how little they accounted for his background or mental state. Former employees anonymously shared stories of shortcuts, rough handling, and internal pressure to reduce problem animals. Meanwhile, Tom didn't retreat. He gave interviews not from a studio, but standing by Caesar's enclosure, his voice tired but sharp. He read from his personal journals, passages written during Caesar's earliest days as a cub. He shared photos. Caesar curled beside him on a blanket, licking spilled formula from his hand, pawing at a soccer ball. He held nothing back. And the world listened. Activists descended on the sanctuary. Tents and banners lined the roadside. No justice, no silence. Volunteers passed out flyers. Local news aired protests daily. Even sanctuary visitors began demanding refunds, outraged by what they now saw as a facade of care. But Cutter remained a wall. Every appeal was met with silence or the same cold refrain. We are following protocol. Yet the public's rage wasn't cooling. It was sharpening into something more organized, more relentless. The narrative had changed. This wasn't just about a lion anymore. It was about accountability. It was about cruelty behind closed doors, about the system's indifference and the power of undeniable truth. And the world wasn't letting go. It wasn't released with fanfare. There was no press release, no dramatic countdown, just a quiet upload to Tom's social channels titled simply, The Truth Uncut. It was a single unedited video, no music, no overlays, no commentary, just raw footage strapped to Tom Reynolds' chest as he stepped into the enclosure that day. The image was shaky at first, heavy breathing, gravel crunching under his boots. Then the camera steadied. Caesar was visible, pacing in the distance, his massive body taut with tension. You could hear the animal's breaths, short, charged, almost panicked. And then, with a voice barely above a whisper, Tom said 6 words that sliced through the silence like a blade. "It's me, buddy. I'm home." The effect was instant. Caesar's steps slowed. His ears twitched. There was a pause, brief but colossal. And then, a sound no one expected. A low, resonant purr. Not a snarl, not a growl, but the unmistakable rumble of affection. Relief, recognition. That sound cracked the internet's heart wide open. Every doubt that had lingered was obliterated. He hadn't charged to kill. He had charged to reunite. In the hours that followed, media outlets rewrote their headlines. Experts, zookeepers, ethologists, even skeptics, weighed in. "This is not behavior from an aggressive predator," one noted. "This is emotional memory. This is loyalty." The fallout came fast. A leaked memo from a former employee confirmed what Tom had long claimed. Caesar's euthanasia was not based on public risk, but on internal policy, a quiet cost-cutting directive meant to eliminate high-maintenance legacy animals. Public fury turned to legal action. The sanctuary's board convened emergency meetings. Whistleblowers stepped forward with emails, surveillance logs, audio recordings. And then, on the fourth day, the news broke. Marvin Cutter had resigned. But the tide didn't stop there. An independent review dismantled the sanctuary's entire executive structure. New leadership was installed. Animal psychologists, enrichment specialists, and former whistleblowers formed the heart of a reformed mission, one centered on healing, not containment. As for Tom and Caesar, they didn't stay. Footage later emerged, drone shot and cinematic in scope, of a vast Colorado reserve, hills blanketed in grass, streams cutting through valleys, and at the center, a man and a lion walking side by side. No cage, no fear, just silence, trust, and open sky. The video ended with a single caption. He never charged to attack. He charged to remember who still loved him. And with that, justice didn't roar. It resonated,